This goes back to ancient history, ancient biblical history, like all history. Anytime you have a king that has undisputed power and rule, reign, and authority over everybody, no matter what, it never turns out well. It never. So hate the Republicans, hate the Democrats all you want, but just realize checks and balances and opposing opinions is what keeps the country great. What's up? Welcome to Fight City Gym Talk. You are here with Mundo and Eric Wallin. Mundo, what's your last name again?
Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, of course. Okay, the question, the topic today is, did MMA affect the results of the election? And again, without getting too political and jumping on sides or anything, let's just talk straight facts, right? Not opinions, but let's just talk facts. So what do you think? Did MMA affect the results of the 2024 presidential election? Does Donald Trump owe MMA a pat on the back? Thanks, MMA, for helping me obtain office.
I mean, if you look at the cards, right? As soon as the pandemic started, what was the first sport that was trying to get back into it?
MMA was the first sport to, I want to say, to do a big multi-international
event.
Yeah, like there was no crowd, but they didn't stop production.
Exactly.
I remember basketball was throwing together games without a crowd. I want to say some NFL teams, some NFL
But
had some
this
games
didn't
without a crowd.
start until Dana started his.
But Dana was the one who really never stopped.
Nope.
Like,
Everybody else took a break, and then once they saw Dana got that first pay-per-view through, they're like, okay, maybe it can be done.
right.
And from there,
And I think people like that. You got to remember, people elect the president, whether you think the elections are fraudulent or not. We the people, at least we the people, should be the ones electing our leaders.
Right.
And we the people, I think, spoke as sports fans and was like, we want sports. We want competition. We want things to be open.
and not just sports. I feel like the way that the country was going, it was starting to seem like they were just letting everything be inclusive. And the one sport that can't be inclusive is MMA.
Yeah.
You can't have a guy in there beating up a woman.
Yeah.
And that's just...
So yeah, and that's the other thing. There has to be a hard line in MMA as far as like women's division and men's divisions and transgenders getting in. Again, without getting too much one-sided, I don't know that anyone feels good about women fighting men or
I would love to see, and maybe this is just, I'm maybe crazy, but I would love to see a transgender person join MMA from the women's side, be a great fighter, and be like, you know what, I think I could beat a man and do it. Now, I don't think it would be possible, and I don't think they should do it, but that's the only way I'd be like, dang.
We would all love to see it, but is it
a Cinderella
possible?
story? No, of course not. I mean, the genetics and everything, but that's the only way that I can get
now,
behind.
before you get mad at him, just remember, he voted for Joe Biden. So if you're getting mad at him like, hey.
Yes, I did.
Women can beat up men. Just remember, I'll be straight with you. He voted for Joe Biden.
He's right.
So don't.
No, but I mean, at the end of the day, the sports, the people backing the sports want to make sure all athletes are safe.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is by.
So we touched on a couple points. MMA stayed strong throughout coronavirus. MMA draws a hard line between men athletes and female athletes. So what else did we see that led up to potentially MMA getting Donald Trump reelected?
Well, when we go back to the whole COVID thing, I feel like since it led the charge of being the first sport back on TV, it also became the #1 sport nationwide. Not even just America, but around the world. And so everybody around the world started getting behind not just the UFC, but the people the UFC was getting behind, including Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And since I go back to how they kind of handled the last 4 years with the whole making everything equal. I never really saw them even trying to go to those events and trying to show face and be like, you know what, we support. Or even basketball or football. They wouldn't go to those events either. The biggest thing they showed in football as far as them was Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I mean, so as far as sports go, we all know football is #1 in America, has been, but they didn't even show up there. MMA is starting to get there.
Yeah.
But again, it shows like
and leave in the comments, and I already did a video on this, like, should sports and politics mix and mingle? And let's go back to Dana White. Dana White has said he's not going to muzzle any of his fighters. If he has one fighter that wants to push a left agenda and another fighter that wants to push a right agenda, he doesn't care.
I mean,
they asked Dana White. They said, hey, I forget, maybe it was Colby Covington or something, but they said, like, hey, what do you think about his remarks? Are you going to fine him? And he's like, why would I? I'll have to, you guys know what quote I'm talking about. But Dana White basically just said in very no uncertain terms, he's like, I don't muzzle my fighters. They can say whatever they want. We are a free country. They have the freedom of speech.
Plus, Dana White doesn't just work in the realms of the USA. He works in the realms of the world. So he doesn't know what other countries are going through with other people and the politics there. He probably doesn't keep up with everything.
He's got a bunch of Muslims fighting for him.
Exactly.
And
Christians. And it's so much on his hands. He can't just be like, oh, this is the... No, he's not into that.
But he obviously picked a side.
Of course,
Dana White
he went out there
is a Republican. He obviously... I thought this was hilarious. I felt like when Dana White spoke for Donald Trump when they were accepting their award-winning, presidential speech, and Donald Trump said, Dana White, come have a word. Basically, Dana White gets up there, and I swear to you, have you seen it?
No, I didn't see. I was working that night.
Dana White essentially gave a post-fight interview. And if you ask me, it was hilarious because Dana White is criticizing fighters if they've got good post-fight interviews or bad post-fight interviews. I think Chael Sonnen had the best. Conor McGregor had some of the great post-fight interviews. But Dana White basically gets out there and he's like, I want to thank my friends, my family, Donald Trump and his family. They're hardworking individuals. And he ran it exactly like a post-fight interview. And honestly, it got a C grade. It was not a great post-fight interview. But in my mind, I'm like, we'll never see Dana White fight. But if he did have a post-fight interview, go watch it. It was when Donald Trump invited him up to have a few words. That was the Dana White post-fight interview.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he felt on top of the world. He saw his best friend win the presidency. That he probably thought his friend was going to go to jail after all the drama that was going on. He's like full circle after a year.
The other thing we can't ignore is Donald Trump going on to Joe Rogan.
Yes.
We can't ignore that. I mean, who was Joe Rogan before MMA? And I think we have to tie all this together. Who was Joe Rogan before MMA? If you had asked me 20 years ago, who's Joe Rogan? First things first, I wouldn't have known who Joe Rogan was. And then they would have been like, the guy on Fear Factor. And then I'm like, oh, the Fear Factor guy.
Yeah.
And if someone would have told me that Joe Rogan, the Fear Factor guy, was a world-class kickboxer, I'd be like, that's kind of cool. And I had no idea. Matter of fact, when I first saw my first UFC fights, coming from a wrestling background, I felt like they should have like an Olympic wrestler as a commentator or something. And I saw Joe Rogan, the Fear Factor guy. I was a little bit maybe offended. Like, why would they just get a TV personality to be a fight commentator? Like, what does Joe know about fighting? But that was before you could just Google anything. And like, come to find out, he was a legitimate kickboxer. And so at the end of the day, we all love Joe Rogan now, right? But what I'm saying is Dana White turned Joe Rogan into a mega superstar. Not just a superstar, like a mega superstar. So with Joe Rogan being a mega superstar, then Joe Rogan has the power and the authority to give Donald Trump a platform.
And I mean, he reached out to Kamala Harris, and like he said, but they wanted him to do all sorts of stuff and jump to ropes. And I honestly don't think she wanted to do podcasts because she didn't want to show face. She wanted to be in a certain area where she could edit all her stuff.
It would be so hard, again, without getting too political, it would be so hard to have a lighthearted, fun, non-accusing conversation with Kamala. And really, did MMA win Donald Trump the election, or did Kamala and Biden fail to produce results?
I think the Dems lost their own crowd. And
if they failed to produce results, and Kamala knew that she couldn't put up a good conversation with Joe Rogan and back her points and back her policies and talk about new upcoming policies, like, did they dig their own grave?
They couldn't respond for any questions that they asked them. I was paying a little bit of attention, but even like the questions I had, like why were they sending money to these countries when our own people were suffering? We had all sorts of catastrophes happen, and they were telling people were saying that they didn't have money for that.
Right.
But we saw billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine and Israel. So of course people were going to vote the other way. It didn't seem right.
Donald Trump was so human on that interview. And the reason I say Donald Trump was so human on that interview is Joe Rogan's asking questions like, we want to know about UFOs. We want to know about JFK. We want to know. And Donald Trump is having a good conversation.
Yeah,
He's not backing away from it, afraid of these questions. He's just like, I'd like to know too, and I'll open up as many files as I can to the American people. And like it was a very real conversation, and I felt like Donald Trump was cool to get into a little bit of the conspiracy side of the presidential seat that like we all kind of want to know, but can the president really talk about this stuff?
I mean, if you ask me, I thought he won it when he got shot in the ear. But that's just
So it wasn't MMA. It wasn't the Democrats in the last 4 years. Nope. It had everything to do. What was that teenage kid's name?
Oh, I don't know his name.
It had everything to do with some teenage kid shooting Donald Trump in the ear.
I seen the news. I was like, oh, did it really just happen? Did he get? And then I was like, oh, he won the election. Oh, he just won the election. Man,
yeah, that's hard. That's hard. I don't know how. I mean, you almost wonder, did Donald Trump set that up?
You really
did he have like a little razor blade on his ear, and did that kid fire a blank? And
or was it just like a firecracker somewhere?
Yeah, like obviously that kid was dead, and maybe I don't know.
It's not even a real body.
Is Epstein dead? Is Tupac dead? Personally, I don't think Epstein's dead, but whatever.
I don't think Tupac's dead.
So
how you gonna be releasing music after your death 20 years
without
later?
getting too deep into conspiracy, like that helped the election so much. I have wondered, man, could that be staged? Because that helped a lot. That helped a ton.
It's just so crazy. It's just like the timing of it to be aired.
And then he almost got assassinated again. Like, without getting too much into the assassination, was it just bad Secret Service? Were they just not good at what they were doing?
They ain't there no more. They're probably fired.
If they're still on squad when Donald Trump is president, that is crazy talk. But who knows?
They're probably on poop duty or something.
Yeah.
They grab the president's poop from the toilet. That's probably their job. That's probably their job. They do that. They really do that.
Oh,
they do that. I swear. I know it's a weird fact to know, but I know that fact.
You're gonna have to. What documentary were you watching when you saw that?
I watched it when I was little. They were talking about George Bush. How they can't leave George Bush's fecal material in any bathroom because they're afraid someone will grab his fecal material and know his like allergies and stuff like that. So there is literally a guy in Secret Service who goes in there and picks up his poop. Weird fact to know.
Leave a comment in the comment section.
Guys.
If he's full of crap, someone do your homework and let me know.
Please do your homework and let me know that I'm not crazy. I remember maybe it's a Mandela effect, but I remember seeing this when I was little.
I looked up, I'm pretty sure I saw the number when I looked up and this was a few days after Trump was on the Joe Rogan show.
Right.
A few days after, there was 45 million views for that podcast, Trump.
And here's the crazy thing. She could have done the same podcast and probably got the same views.
Could have. Then they had Fetterman on. I don't know if you guys know who Fetterman is.
No,
I want to say he's the senator of New Jersey or something. I'll put in the comments exactly who Fetterman is. But like, he got 1 million. And Fetterman, basically we could call him like the Harris replacement, got 1 million. And let me tell you why I think that's so weird. Fetterman bombed. It was a terrible interview. You're watching this guy, and without talking too much trash on Fetterman, he had a stroke before he got elected. He can't talk straight. He doesn't understand sentences. Literally, Joe Rogan would have to ask a question. He'd look at his phone and then think and be like, I don't think I understand the question. And like, it was the most like hard to watch interview I've ever seen. And what I'm getting at is I truly think that YouTube suppressed that interview. Does that make
what's a
sense?
good interview with Donald Trump before the Joe Rogan one was the Theo Vaughn one.
Oh yeah, so you have Theo
That was
Vaughn.
another good one. And I just honestly think that was the biggest thing that they did with Donald Trump. They humanized him.
Yeah.
And they should have done that with Kamala if they even wanted a chance to get
The
her.
Democrats are a little bit butthurt. They're like, well, it's just we don't have a Joe Rogan on our side, and it's like, no, you did have a Joe Rogan on your side. Joe Rogan was originally Democrat, and
he
then
invited them over.
he went independent, and then I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure if Joe Rogan voted, there was a big X by the Trump on his ballot.
I'm pretty sure it looked red. I doubt it looked blue. I mean, he went to Texas.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
you don't think
and we
a
also-
Dem went to Texas?
we also forgot to mention Elon Musk. Like, how much did that affect the election when Elon Musk was now supporting and backing, and Donald Trump is talking about putting Elon Musk in charge of SpaceX? And so, like, how much did that affect
NASA.
the election as well? So, long story short, did MMA affect the election?
I think MMA's key players played a huge impact in the election. I don't know if it played the biggest impact, but I'm sure it played a huge impact.
I think it helped. I think it helped. But let me also tell you, sorry, Democrats, I think Trump didn't win, but I think they lost.
That's how I saw it too.
If this was a sport, I would be saying, no, Trump didn't win. The Democrats lost. And when I say they lost, is
they didn't do nothing to win.
they didn't. Kamala was in office. She was the vice president. She didn't produce what the American people wanted to see.
And they didn't let her run a campaign the whole campaign. They didn't put her in until they felt that Joe Biden was done.
Yep. And the other thing is they were pushing Biden until he had a bomb of a debate with Trump. And after he bombed that debate, then like, oh, they're shuffling. So again, if it was a sporting event, it would be like, you're swapping quarterbacks in the middle of the game. And it's like, hey, wait, did this team win or did this team lose? But at the end of the day, they couldn't get their offense together. They couldn't get their defense together. They're swapping quarterbacks. They got injuries. And
it's like they let the special teams go out there and try to win the team the first.
And they're they banked on one thing, and really all they played on was original Democrats that will vote Democrat no matter what, whether it's Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse running for Democrat, they will always vote Democrat. And we have them on the Republican side as well. But like at the end of the day, it just seemed like I felt like the Democrats lost the election. So did MMA affect it? I think MMA helped. Matter of fact, I think MMA absolutely helped helped Nevada go red. I think MMA helped Phoenix go red because MMA is very popular in those states, and they both went red. The thing is, but those are flip states.
Oh yeah, no, not here.
So
this is red.
But the problem is, Trump won the election. I could easily see how MMA would help Nevada win, and I could see how MMA would help Phoenix and Arizona win. But the thing is, Trump won before those two states.
I think so many people turned in the Dem side to red, not even based off Trump being there. They just didn't want more of the same. Honestly, that's how I see it.
And so one was it cards well played for Trump? Was it cards badly played for the Dems?
I think it's a bit of both.
And back to, if you're Democrat, once again, I'm trying to stay bipartisan here, but if you're Democrat, the question is, what are you going to do to get your team on track?
And remember, guys, we're Team America. You can't be crying about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. What are the Democrats going to do to get their team on track? Because here's the thing. It is slightly scary. If Trump has the judicial, the judges of the Supreme Court, if Trump has the Supreme Court behind him, the Senate, the House, and the presidential seat all in his favor, and he has no one to contest or contend against his policy, like, as if you're Republican or not, you have to admit that's a little bit scary.
I think it's not that it's scary.
Yes, it is. He has nothing. There's supposed to be checks and balances in America. Like, you're supposed to have someone opposing your opinion. You're supposed to have an opposite side here in America. If you don't have an opposite side here in America, it is quite scary. And a lot of the Dems are like, oh, Trump's going to be a dictator. Why did you allow him to be a dictator? Why did we not get a Senate or a House or a Supreme Court to fight against him?
Everybody voted
because
red.
if everybody goes now this is what I'm hoping the Dems see and recognize. I hope they see that like there needs to be some policy change.
I think it's also a matter of an overcorrection with PC culture. I think
Yes,
PC culture is such
and that's
a
what I'm
huge
talking
thing,
about with
too.
policy change.
Yeah.
Like, do we all want to see the transgender movement be the forefront of your movement? Do we all
just
want to see?
everything that led to that? It's like
Do we all want to see these types of policies? Do we want to defund the police? Do we all want to see this stuff? And at the end of the day, I think the Dems are often quick to jump on ridiculous policies. And you can be mad at me, but there's a lot of people that are saying the same thing. Like, do we really want to see all these things get pushed through from a Democratic perspective?
here's the thing, guys. Flint, Michigan still has bad water to this day.
What do you mean by that?
Flint, Michigan, you know their water was bad a couple years ago. They haven't
Right.
fixed that.
Oh, and so you're saying since that's a blue state,
What I'm saying is, we've had Dems in office for the last 8 years at least, because they were in office for a while
Right.
before that happened, and nothing's changed there. Like, if
Yeah.
nothing changes, people aren't going to keep voting the same. Like, they can't just hope people keep hoping they're the guy.
and look, I like the idea of the democratic system because there needs to be checks and balances.
Yeah.
The president needs to have people to answer to. And so they need to be strong to put checks and balances in our democratic democracy, right? And if any one person has too much power and authority, that's scary from any perspective. We're going back to biblical stuff. Like I say, I'm a Sunday school teacher. This goes back to ancient history, ancient biblical history, like all history. Anytime you have a king that has undisputed power and rule, reign, and authority over everybody, no matter what, it never turns out well. It never. So hate the Republicans, hate the Democrats all you want, but just realize checks and balances and opposing opinions is what keeps the country great.
And that's why America's the greatest.
It is. Anything else you want to say?
Fights coming up November 15th. Check it out, pay-per-view.
You're fighting.
My fight.
You're fighting. November
Yes, sir.
15th.
November 15th. We got this.
What do you know about your opponent?
I don't want to say too much, but, you know, he does a lot himself. You know, he puts himself out there like that, so I'd rather just let him put himself out there. I know he used to train here. I know he's been working hard for this fight, and he had another fight that didn't fall through. And
His opponent has lost, I want to say 200 to 300 pounds.
the one he fought, or the one he was supposed to fight?
No, I'm talking like, so we're talking about Rod Payne.
Oh, Rod.
Rod Payne at his highest, I don't know the numbers, compared to where he is now, he's lost 200 to 300 pounds. We've had him on this podcast before. And so like, Rod has lost an insane amount of weight to get himself eligible and ready for this fight. But on the flip side, how much weight have you lost in total?
In total,
Your highest to where you're at
I
now.
started at 300 pounds. Right now, I checked the scale last. I am at 220.
220, so you've lost 80 pounds. So this is a war of attrition. These guys have lost an insane amount of weight with a goal in mind. I want to be an MMA fighter. And so they're doing it. So win, lose, or draw, there's not a loser in this fight. I promise there's not. Rod, if you're watching, there's not a loser in this fight. But someone is going to get their hand raised.
That's all fights. I mean, unless there's a draw, which I hope there's not a
Someone's
draw,
gonna get
but
their hand
I'm
raised.
going.
I promise
I'm going in
someone's
for the
getting their
win for
hand
sure.
raised.
I know he's going in for the win for sure. So it should be a good night.
Someone's going to get their
It's gonna
hand
be a good
raised that
night.
night.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good night.
So fantastic, man. I can't wait to see that fight. We have a few other guys fighting on that card as well. And I'll bring my camera. I'll record as I'm cornering and stuff like that. So hopefully we can get some footage for the Fight City Gym Talk subscribers as well. Anything else?
No, everybody, good luck to you in your fights. I hope everybody who trains here, you know, eventually gets their fights too. You know, it's just a matter of working hard. It doesn't take much.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. And we'll talk to you again soon.